Raising the bar is not just about doing more work. It's about doing quality work, and it's about creating a culture where people have a quality experience while doing great work. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Reflect Forward. I'm your host, Kerry Siggins, and I'm so glad you are here today. Today, we're going to talk about the hidden cost of tolerating good enough. In my opinion, complacency is the slow death of leadership. When leaders tolerate good enough, they unintentionally set the ceilings for their team's potential, and this holds everyone back. I'll share a story of a major change that I made because good enough was not good enough. So back in 2015, we made the decision to change our business model, stop selling through distributors in our key markets, and instead sell direct to customers. This was a major departure from our history. We had always sold through dealers, but we changed our product line. We started moving away from tools that screw on the end of hoses to automated equipment. We invested a lot of money in developing this equipment, and our dealers had the good enough mentality as well. And they weren't investing in our equipment and everything they needed to support a much longer sales cycle. So I decided that it was time for us to build those direct relationships with our customers. We were building products that no one in the industry had used, and we didn't need a middleman between us and our customers from a product development standpoint and also from a sales channel standpoint. And this was an incredibly disruptive decision. We were changing the entire way we went to market. And we had to invest in building the relationships with customers that we didn't have. We had to go set up offices and a rental business and do all these things that we had never done before. So there was a lot of risk involved. And we had to get past this idea that status quo was good enough. And it was incredibly difficult, but it set us on a completely different path and really changed the organization for the better. And now we have relationships with our customers like we never imagined that we would. And we are pushing the industry forward and really changing the way our customers do their work. And so I wanted to share this story because we could have gone with good enough. We could have said, oh, the dealer model, it has worked in the past and we can just continue to push them. And it's too hard to make this change. It's too big of a risk to make this change. Good enough is okay. But I could see where the future was going because of our vision and how we wanted to grow and how we wanted to continue to disrupt the industry. It did not make sense for us to stick with status quo. And even though it was the right decision to make, it was really hard. There was so much emotion. Lots of people didn't agree with it. I made a lot of people mad in the industry because we did change our business model and we cut our dealers out. It was a hard transition, but the right thing to do. And it was so important to get past that idea of good enough is good enough. And so that's what I want to talk about today. Why good enough is dangerous, how leaders can spot it, and how to break free from this, it's good enough without burning people out. So let's first dive into why good enough is so dangerous. There is a psychological trap that we fall into. We accept good enough because it feels safe. It allows us to avoid conflict. It allows us to not take risk. But when you are saying good enough is good enough, you slowly erode your excellence. And that is not good for any company. A good example of this is continuing to carry people who are either poor performers or even just mediocre at their jobs. I think all leaders have done this. I certainly have. I can give you a dozen examples where we just thought, is it really worth the disruption it's going to cause to let this person go? The fear that it's going to create because, oh my gosh, this person got fired. And getting over the mindset that the performance isn't that bad. It's not that great either. So, is it really worth firing this person for? Yes and yes. If you're trying to build an excellent company, you should not carry people who are mediocre at their jobs. I have seen this time and time again when we have let either poor performers go or people who are even just mediocre in our job, how it really raises the bar. People want to work next to rock stars. They want to work with people who are committed, who are great at their jobs, who are great teammates. And when companies tolerate poor performance or even mediocre performance, it says to everybody else that their contributions are somehow valued a little bit less. Just because an employee is doing a fine job, know that you are potentially holding your team and the company back because you are not raising that bar to unlock innovation, to unlock new ideas, to unlock performance. And as the famous Jim Collins says in his book, Good to Great, good is the enemy of great. And we leaders have to hold our teams accountable to high performance, to being great teammates, to adding real value to our customers so that we can grow the company. And there's all kinds of things that you can do from a cultural perspective to make that happen, which we're not going to dive into in this podcast. I have dozens and dozens of episodes on building culture, building trust, building engagement, building the ownership mindset. But there is data that correlates this idea that people want to be managed effectively. They want to be motivated by their manager to do outstanding work. And as a manager, you might feel like that's not my job to motivate my people, but it is your job. They also have to be part of motivating themselves as well. It's not fully management's responsibility, but we set the stage. And in a Gallup study, they found that only 21% of employees feel strongly that their performance is managed in a way for them to do outstanding work. So we as leaders, when we just allow good enough and we don't really manage people in a way that inspires them to give their very best, we are settling for mediocrity, and that directly feeds disengagement. So that's why it's so dangerous to just have this mindset of it's good enough. And then there's the ripple effect of complacency. Good enough in leadership creates a culture where people do just what's required, no more, no less. That means that they are simply showing up for their paycheck. And that goes against everything that the ownership mindset is all about, because the ownership mindset is about showing up and thinking and acting like an owner, whether you're an employee-owned company like Stone Age is or not. When you shift these expectations around high performance and we're going to do big things, it energizes people. So think about it. In your leadership or in your team, especially when you see morale is slipping, look at yourself and say, am I setting the bar high enough? And how, by shifting expectations, can I re-energize people? And I absolutely saw this happen when we made this major change to our business model. Morale was slipping within the company because our dealers just weren't getting it. They just weren't selling our products at the rate that we thought that they should be. They weren't investing in the change it was going to require for them to sell this new type of product. And it was super frustrating because we spent years and years and tons of money developing these products, and we were seeing them not move very quickly because we didn't have dealers invested in that change with us. And so when we made the switch to selling direct to our customers in key markets, even though that transition was incredibly hard and so much work, it absolutely re-energized our team because we set the bar higher. We said, we can do this better. We are going to make sure that our customers never regret coming to us direct and not working with a dealer, because we give better service, because we are more responsive, because we listen to them and take their feedback and incorporate it into our new product development faster. And it was incredibly motivating to the team. We said, no more low bar. We're going to set the bar for what service is going to look like in this industry, combined with our great products, and change the industry. And it re-energized everyone. And it reminds me of a Tony Robbins quote where he says, the only impossible journey is the one you never begin. Oh, that is so true. When you are settling for good enough, you are not beginning that journey to transform your team or your company or even yourself. When you have this mindset of we are going to go on this journey together, you motivate people to achieve their very best. So remember that when you're thinking like, oh, status quo, that sounds really good because this change is going to be really hard. The only impossible journey is the one you never begin. You can get through anything you set your mind to with proper planning, proper execution, and proper motivation of your team. And this is backed up by statistics. According to McKinsey, companies with high performance cultures are 3.7 times more likely to be in the top quartile performers financially. Mediocrity literally costs you money as a leader of an organization. Don't forget that. So how do you raise standards without burning people out? Because I get it. Like these big changes, they can feel daunting. A lot of people like status quo. It's in their comfort zone. They don't have to learn new skills or take risks and push themselves really hard. And the key is balance. Striving for excellence does not mean that you have to demand perfection. In fact, just the opposite. When you are making a major change in your business model or in your team culture or whatever it is you're doing, there's going to be so many mistakes along the way. We made a ton of mistakes in this transition, and some I'm really glad that we learned a lot from, and some are like, okay, yeah, that was dumb. We probably shouldn't have done that. And we learn from it. We certainly did not demand perfection from anyone. We created clarity, accountability, and inspiration, which helped balance out this idea that we have to execute this perfectly. No, we have to be a learning organization. We have to be able to pivot quickly when something isn't working. And that is what's very motivating to people. We raised the standards at Stone Age when we created the Own It mindset. I think this was a really important aspect of our culture. We were employee owned before we did an ESOP. An ESOP is an employee stock ownership plan. It's where stock is given as part of compensation to our employees. Prior to that, our employees could buy stock in the company. It was a skin in the game program. And those are two very different models, right? You invest your own money, you get dividends. Like, it feels like real ownership, where the ESOP is given to you as part of your compensation and you get a statement every year, but it doesn't feel as tangible. And we saw that when we brought new employees in who were part of the ESOP, who weren't part of the skin in the game program, they didn't really understand what it means to be an owner within the company. And in fact, we had to let a toxic high performer go, somebody who was really great at their job, but who was a total jerk to work with. And when we let him go, we said, we're letting you go because you're not a great teammate. And he said, where in my job description does it say I have to be a great teammate? And it was right. He was doing all of the things in his job description very well, but it was how he was making others feel, how others were experiencing him, that was really ineffective. And I said, he's right. We are going to change that. We are going to define our culture and set expectations so that it is very clear that is not going to happen again. So we developed the Own It mindset, which outlines our culture and how people can show up successfully in our culture, not just from the quality of work that they do, but how they make others feel while they're doing that work. And this raised the bar. And a lot of people had to self-select out. This culture isn't for everybody, and that's okay. And so by raising that bar, it improved our culture. It added clarity, which is so incredibly helpful when people understand what it means to be an owner here, what success looks like. And then we could celebrate progress, not just outcomes, but here's how we're developing the Own It mindset within the organization. Here's the wins that we had, and here's how it's going to evolve over time, because it absolutely has evolved dramatically since we did that over a decade ago. And this clarity, I think, really helped create motivation, inspiration, and that clarity, which helped people not burn out, which helped them not feel exhausted trying to figure out how to fit into this culture. We certainly have more improvement that we can do in this area, but it raised the bar in ownership thinking. And I believe that clarity really did help people thrive rather than risk that burning out. Because when you're not really clear of the expectations in a specific culture, it can absolutely lead to burnout. So what are some practical strategies that you can employ to keep people engaged and motivated? 1, set clear expectations, celebrate progress, not just outcomes. People want to understand what success looks like, and they want to be rewarded along the way. Goes back to my podcast on the gap versus the gain. When we look at how far we still have to go in pursuit of our goals, it can feel daunting and demotivating. But when we look how far we have come, people say, oh, wow, I've done a great job. We've made so much progress. That makes it feel more team-like and like you're taking the time to honor and recognize those wins rather than just saying, oh, that's the outcome. This is the outcome. Let's get to that. So set clear expectations and celebrate progress, not just outcomes. The second thing is focus on the growth mindset. A growth mindset means you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have learnings, and that's okay. In fact, it can be celebrated. If you look at mistakes as stepping stones, it helps create a culture where people are not afraid to take risks, where they'll share their ideas, they'll speak up, and that will decrease the chance that they burn out, because people burn out when the organization is so focused on not making mistakes and so focused on only outcomes rather than the growth of the journey along the way. And then finally, model what it looks like to raise your own bar. What are you doing as a leader to raise the standards that you hold yourself to and that you hold your team to? And what happens when you don't meet those standards? Do you own it? Modeling it helps your team know that it's not just lip service, that it's something that you hold yourself accountable to. Raising standards is about clarity. It is not about pressure. When you give people clarity, like as Brene Brown said, clear is kind, unclear is unkind, it removes that pressure of trying to navigate and figure out what does success look like. Line that out. That is how you can help people avoid burnout. And then, of course, make sure that when you are raising the bar, that it is realistic. Like you can't just pile more work on people and say, oh, this is how you raise the bar. No, you have to give them space to be able to do high quality work, which means you prioritize for them and take things off of their plate so that they're working on the most important things to move the team and the company forward. So remember, raising the bar is not just about doing more work. It's about doing quality work, and it's about creating a culture where people have a quality experience while doing great work. So now let's talk about you. How are you holding yourself to high standards? First and foremost, you set the tone as the leader. You cannot expect your team to reject mediocrity if you're cutting corners yourself. Leaders must go first. So if you find yourself in a time where you're being complacent, and every single leader does, we all do, every single human does, right? We go up and we go down. It's about how do you pull yourself out of it? How do you say, no, I am going to make sure that I'm showing up in the way that the team needs me to show up. Everybody hits those plateaus. How you recommit to higher standards changes the trajectory of the organization. This happened to me just recently. About a year and a half ago, my director of global sales left the company and went to go work for a customer. And I'm dear friends with him. I love him. I talk to him all the time. But it was really hard. And part of the reason why he left was because I had gone out on my book tour. And because I was putting so much effort into promoting my book, I had my focus taken away from the organization. And this was some of the feedback that he gave to me was like, look, we need you here. We need you here more present. And I realized that even though I didn't feel like I was being mediocre at all, I poured my heart and soul and hundreds and hundreds of hours into writing this book. I realized that my focus was taken away from the company as I was doing my book tour. And even though we talked about it as a team, it just wasn't the right time for me to be removed from the company that much. And so I had to recommit, and I ran sales for a year, and it was a really good experience. And I'm so glad that I did it, and I dove right back in. It was fantastic. And so many of our team members' performance really rose during that time, because whenever there's a leadership void with our director of global sales leaving, people step up with it. That's what always happens. And it was a really amazing experience. And it was really fantastic for me to be able to get that feedback and to act on it and to pivot quickly and make that transition and have it be successful. And that is really what the Own It mindset is about. True ownership is about looking in the mirror and saying, am I walking my own talk? And that's really important for you to hold yourself accountable to those high standards. Whatever you are, be a good one. That is what Abraham Lincoln said. And you should do everything that you are passionate about, that you are focused on, to the very best of your abilities. Hold yourself to those high standards. So how do you do this? Here's a couple of tips. One, build a ritual of self-reflection. As you know, I am a big journaler. I think you need to ask yourself in your journal, where am I slipping into good enough? Especially if you feel like, I think I could do better. Do that weekly until you get back on track. Self-reflection is so incredibly important. The second thing is seek feedback intentionally, even when it's uncomfortable. Feedback is a mirror for blind spots. I was so grateful for my team's feedback about my book tour. When my second book comes out next year, I'm not doing a book tour. I'm changing up the whole way that I'm going about it, in part because of that feedback. Even though the company is in a strong position and my team is amazing, right, they still need me to be incredibly present. And so I have to find that balance of my personal ambitions of writing and speaking and being a thought leader and running a company. They're both equally important to me. They both fill my bucket and make me so happy, and it's so worthwhile because I feel like I'm making an impact. But I absolutely understand that people say her focus is split. She does her podcast, she writes, she speaks, and she runs a company. My job is to be able to do both of them with excellence. And I can only do that if I'm getting feedback so that those blind spots that I have are shown to me and I can be the kind of leader my team needs. The third thing is to share openly with your team when you raise your own bar. That makes accountability contagious. So for example, I want to put a new operating system within StoneAge. We are running the company on a system that we created by hand a few years ago. And I went through this great program called Build with Cambric this year. And I learned so much about how to build a stronger operating system so that things just run a little bit smoother within the organization and how processes are operating and the cadence that you execute your strategy on. And I saw, hey, here's ways that I can make this company better. And so I am working with my team on putting this operating system in place. And that is about raising the bar. And I shared it with the team. I think this is a weakness that we have. I think we can do better here. So let's tackle this. In fact, this week I have our kickoff meeting for how we're going to go about doing this. I think that's really important to share. Hey, team, I think I can do better. I'm going to hold myself accountable to this and raise the standards. Number 4, surround yourself with truth tellers, not cheerleaders. You want to create a circle that will call you out when you are slipping into good enough. And the higher up you get into an organization, the harder that is. So make sure that you make it safe for your team to call you out if they see you lowering that bar just a little bit. Number 5, revisit your personal standards quarterly. And that's just not on your leadership, right? That's about fitness. It's about learning. It's about those leadership behaviors. It's about your relationships. Where in your life are you growing and where in your life are coasting? Analyze that. And when you are seeing yourself coasting, ask yourself, is this something that I need to be focused on? If it's not, get rid of it. If it is, then figure out how to raise the bar. And then finally, number 6, use small, visible commitments like showing up on time, delivering when you promised, doing what you say you're going to do. High standards starts with the little things because if you aren't doing the little things, you're not going to do the big things. So keep those commitments to yourself and to your team and show that you set the standard high and that you're willing to do what it takes to keep those standards high. So now let's talk about a powerful quarterly practice that you can do if you want to stop tolerating mediocrity in yourself and your organization, and that is an ownership audit. It is a diagnostic tool like holding up a mirror to your leadership and culture. So step 1 is you audit yourself first. You ask, where am I coasting? Where have I let my standards slip? Examples could be skipping preparation for meetings or letting your fitness or learning routines slide or not giving feedback quickly. Sit down, take a few minutes every quarter to ask yourself, where have I slipped into autopilot and where do I need to reset? Self-accountability is absolutely the foundation of these audits. So if you are not owning your standards, you cannot ask your team to. So start with yourself first. Step 2 is to audit your team. Ask yourself, where are my team delivering fine work that we've accepted as good enough? Look at performance reviews, project outcomes, customer feedbacks, meeting dynamics. Look at cost savings activities or driving revenue. Wherever the key focus of your team is, dive into that. A warning sign is always when you find yourself saying, they're not great, but they're good enough. If you need to make a practical move, ask yourself, where do I need to create more accountability? Do I need to have one courageous conversation to reset expectations with that person? Do I need to realign the team so that we are focused on what's more important? Do I need to have a performance conversation with somebody? Do I need to make sure that I'm setting clear expectations? Take these practical moves and help them drive your team forward once you do the audit. Step number 3, audit your organization. Ask, where is the business settling? Is it processes? Are we using outdated systems because that's how we've always done it? Look at customer experience. Are we delighting our customers or just satisfying them? Strategy. Are we innovating? Are we playing it safe to protect the status quo? These are all really important questions that you need to ask every single quarter so that you continue to drive the company forward. I'll give you a recent example here at StoneAge. With all the tariffs that were going on, things have been really up and down, some really great months, some lower than expected months. And we decided we wanted to look at ways to be able to drive incremental revenue. And we came up with so many new ideas, things that could drive a couple $1 million of new revenue. And I was like, why aren't we doing this even when times are good? That is good enough. And so we made a commitment to do 2 things. One, we're always going to go through our costs every quarter and say, What can we cut? Even when times are good and we don't need to do it, that should just be part of a process that roots out mediocrity. And same thing with incremental revenue. Where could we be driving incremental revenue now, even when times are good? We shouldn't just be doing it when things are chaotic like they have been this year, that we look at it. That is an audit that we are going to do quarterly as an executive management team to make sure that we are breaking out of that good enough. It certainly has led through a breakthrough for us this year. We did it during COVID, but all of these are driven by times of crises rather than times of prosper. And we should be doing it constantly and consistently to make sure that we are never settling for good enough, never get lulled into complacency just because things are going really well. Step number 4, check for alignment. So after you've gone through the audit, you need to make sure that the actions that you need to take from that audit are in alignment with your strategy as an organization, with your mission, your vision, your values. Make sure that you are focused on what is most important. That's why alignment is so incredibly key here. If you say, hey, we're kind of mediocre in this area, but it's not a really important part of our strategy or our vision or our values, it's not going to resonate with people. Be tight with your focus. Make sure that it is always going to be impactful. And then finally, number 5, take courageous action. Decide whether the issue requires resetting expectations, realigning people to their highest standards, coaching up, providing the tools and feedback for improvement that your team needs, or letting go. If someone or something is holding the organization back, you need to let that person go. You need to let that process go. So here are some practical guidelines for running the audit. Schedule it quarterly like you would financial reviews. Make it a discipline. Number 2, do it in writing to spot patterns over time. Track what you're doing so that you can measure your progress, and you do that by writing it down. Number 3, invite trusted advisors or peers to challenge your blind spots. You might think that something's not a problem, but somebody else might think it is, and they can help you see something that you might not be seeing because you're blind to it. And then finally, number 4, share the highlights of your audit with your team. Transparency builds trust, and it shows that you're in it with them, that you're here to make things better, that you're here to raise the standards for yourself and for them, but you're doing it together. So to wrap things up for this episode, let's talk about what the key takeaways are. Number 1, tolerating good enough erodes your culture and your results. Number 2, complacency spreads like a virus. Leaders must set the bar. Do not let that virus spread. Number 3, raising standards is about clarity and compassion, not about perfection. You want to have a growth mindset, which means mistakes are going to happen. You can raise the standards by making sure expectations are really clear, by being compassionate of people's situations and holding people accountable to always be putting in their best efforts, but it does not mean that they have to be perfect. Number 4, the ownership audit helps leaders spot and eliminate mediocrity in themselves and their teams. So always hold an ownership audit once a quarter, every 6 months, whatever cadence makes sense for you. And then finally, number 5, holding yourself accountable to higher standards inspires trust, energizes your team, and keeps complacency from creeping in. So hold yourself accountable. So the recap from all of this is that complacency is costly, and you must raise the bar continuously for yourself and for your team. My call to action for you today is to do that ownership audit and see where you have gaps in good enough versus great. I want to end with a quote from Steve Jobs. I love this quote. And he says, "Be a yardstick of quality. Some people aren't used to an environment where excellence is expected." Where are you tolerating good enough? And what is one courageous step that you can take today? How are you being the yardstick of quality? And how are you creating an environment where excellence is expected? All right, with that, I will leave you to your day. I hope you have a fantastic one. I look forward to hosting you on next week's episode of Reflect Forward. And if you like this podcast, please share it with a friend, write a review, go subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. If you think this particular episode would be helpful for somebody, please be sure to share it with them. And as always, leave comments for me and let me know what you think. And if you have any topics that you want me to address on Reflect Forward, please let me know. I would love to create any kind of content that would be most helpful for you. With that, I'll leave you for your day. We'll see you next week. Take care.